Hello and welcome to the Raptors show on the Sportsnet Radio Network, presented by Coors Light. Go from full time to game time. Coors Light, made to chill. Make sure you find the Raptors show wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe. And please rate and review the show. I'm your host, William Lou. I'm joined for segment one by my two co-hosts, Blake Murphy, Alex Wong. Alex, what's going on, man? It's a little too cold to be wearing Crocs, but I see you rocking the Crocs.
Yeah, and I've also got my Canadian Blind Hockey Association jersey on. Just want to shout out to my guy, Luca DeMontis. He's a program manager there. A few years ago, I had a chance to work on a project, get to know the Blind Hockey Association a bit more, talk to some of the players. So just want to show some love to them today. So
that's awesome. Also, great name, Luca DeMontis. You want to? Does he want to throw Jokic in as a middle name? Just get the whole Western Conference European star.
Yeah, how are you guys doing, man? What happened last night? Anything happen in your lives?
What happened last night?
Since we chatted?
I made a whole pot of chili during the Raptors Knicks game. It was actually not, because you can't just do one thing during the game.
Yeah, you put your dirty feet up.
Okay.
Your little bed set up in front of the TV, which
no. That's the
you made
the
chili.
TV.
Okay, that's nice.
I made chili during the game. Blake.
Okay, Blake,
what did you do?
What did you do
game?
yesterday, man?
I watched the basketball game.
No, I mean I watched the game.
Yeah, I nothing. I was here until
fun?
like 5 working on some stuff, and then I just went home and watched ball. That's what I do on nights where there's like 12 NBA games.
That's what I do.
I'm boring.
I watch. Yeah, anyways, all right, I guess we got to get to it. The Toronto Raptors lose.
If you're trying to put off the Raptors stuff, I dusted off my business school education, and you have the accounting background that maybe you'd appreciate. As all the news about the Shohei contract specifics were coming out,
yes,
I was like reminding myself what like the time value of money calculation is, and I was like in the MLB CBA trying to see how they handled deferred payments and stuff like that. Pretty creative. They get the annual hit down from 70 to like 46 million for luxury tax purposes. The NBA couldn't get their hands on this because contract lengths are capped anyway, but you would absolutely see the light years Warriors giving out like 40-year deferrals to like Steph's daughter gets 20 million in this year down the line to lessen the luxury tax.
Wait, hold on. For context, for casuals like me, what is so we obviously heard he's going to sign for a $700 million deal, but it's not structured that way?
So it is a 10-year, $700 million deal, but he will only be paid $20 million during the life of the deal. He's going to make $2 million a season, and then there are 10 years of deferrals where he'll get $68 million each year. So he will get $700 million in real money, but because of inflation and the assumptions we make about inflation rates and interest rates, the MLB collective bargaining agreement assumes roughly a 4% annual interest rate or inflation rate. That money is not worth $700 million in today's dollars. That is closer to getting $460 million right this second. So that's how their CBA treats it for luxury tax purposes. Like $680 million 10 years from now is really only going to be worth about $440 million today, plus the $2 million he makes every year.
Yeah. Wow.
Saying Malachi Flynn makes more than Shohei Ohtani annually right now?
I'm telling you right now, Garrett Temple is over $2 million at the league minimum.
Any vet minimum who like has 10 years of service time, will be making more than Shohei this year. And so why this is possible, and I got asked by a couple people, could the Jays do that with like Bo's extension or Vlad's extension? They could. There's no rule against it. But the reason Shohei is able to do this is he makes an estimated $40 to $50 million annually in endorsements. So he doesn't need the near-term cash flow. He can, do this, get the headline contract item, get the money further down the line, and take way less now. And day to day, it doesn't affect him that much. And it also frees the Dodgers up, under the luxury tax, because they're going to be a deep tax team. But like the comparison is like, what if the Warriors and Steph sat down for his, the Clay extension that they're not getting done? What if you could just pay him the minimum and give him all the money way later and with way less of a tax impact?
This is an amazing. It's not even a loophole, I suppose.
No, it's collectively bargained.
Yeah, it's. I kind of now hope that like other players, because you get to the point where, especially when Kobe got older in his career, where it was like he was taking up so much of the salary cap, and it prevented the Lakers from getting any other talent to play with him financially. And like it's like a problem that I guess a lot of stars end up putting themselves into, because they're obviously worth a max, but there's a salary cap. And it's like, even LeBron now, like, imagine if the Lakers, LeBron was just like, you know what, actually, I make probably more off the court than I do on the court. Let me just make the league minimum and just add another max salary slot to their.
They would add Russell Westbrook. So I don't know if that would actually. It might be better that LeBron's taking up some room.
It's fun to joke about Rob Pelinka's management, but it's been undeniably better than our management for the last couple of years.
It's a low bar. Anyways.
Wait until they sign Gary Trent on a low money deal this offseason because the long-term deal isn't there, and another clutch client rehabs their image with the Lakers like shooting 40% on wide open catch and shoot.
Maybe we should just get really tight with one agency then. There's nothing stopping the Raptors from also applying these strategies.
Yeah, Blake, you know this because it's baseball. Every time there's this clip that goes around with David Ortiz every time I think the Yankees lose, where he just goes, "The Yankees lose." Yeah, this is what we're gonna do on this show.
Okay. The Raptors lose.
The Raptors lost again.
Yeah. Okay, we got time for last night's game. Yeah.
Yeah, great game. You know, up and down, up and down we go. Try to win a shootout, can't win a shootout. No defense.
Yeah.
You're a loser.
Throw away possessions in the fourth quarter. Make some threes in the third. Doesn't matter. Get cooked by all the dogs on the Knicks.
Knicks got a lot of dogs, man. Josh Hart, certified dog.
You gotta show some respect to Julius Randle too.
Randle, man. He made so many like leaning Tower of Pisa jumpers.
Jalen Brunson. Yeah, of course.
Julius, can we spend an extra minute on Julius Randle though? Because like the quality of shot making he made in that game was ridiculous. Like Scotty Barnes is physical with him. They were basically the only two guys playing physical this whole game. And Randle would just, whether it was Barnes, whether it was OG, whether it was Jakob, he's just able to against OG even. He couldn't like get space, but he could just like create enough space to get that fade off. I don't think he shot a jump shot vertically.
No,
like
that's what
everything was fading away. He hit so many of those baseline ones. There was one play late where him and Brunson do an action and he's got Schroeder on a mismatch and he's dead. He picks up his dribble at the wrong spot. He's at the elbow. Schroeder like sits off enough that Randall's not going to be able to post him or whatever. Randle pivots like 3 times looking for someone to pass to. And then as the clock expires, just fades away in the paint, like at the elbow over a couple of defenders. And it's just like, even that scenario where he made the mistake, picked up the dribble wrong spot, nobody could get open around him. He's just, I'll bail it out with a tough jumper. And there are a lot of things that the Raptors did poorly last night, and the transition defense was bad, and their defensive execution against Randle, at the very start of the third quarter was bad enough that Darko took a timeout like 90 seconds into the half.
Yeah, he got his own rebound.
Well, first
and then put it back.
He posted Scotty, and Scotty just like didn't angle it right, but there was no help there. Like whoever was on help assignment, probably Pirtle, wasn't there. And then Randle got his own rebound, posted up Pascal, and Pascal, I think because it was a broken play, angled him middle instead of baseline when there was no help there, and Randle just like yammed it on them. So with the exception of that, though, this was like good individual defense on Randle and just incredible shot making. I'm not saying that as an excuse for the whole game because they played pretty poorly defensively on everyone else, and especially transition. But man, you tip your cap to Julius Randle in that one.
Yeah, he's I think this is kind of like similar to what you want a lot of your stars to do, is to soak up all the bad shots in your offense, and then because of you're so good at taking bad shots and making them, that it allows for opportunities for your teammates to get open. And so when you do kick the pass out like he did to Grimes a couple of times, they get wide open shots. Now I also think that Randle actively seeks out bad shots as well, but like it also has this deflating effect where it's like, okay, your best defenders are who? Scotty and OG. Both guys had turns trying to guard Randle, and he's like, I'm just gonna go through both of you guys. I'm gonna bully ball you guys. You don't see OG get bully balled very often. OG's typically the one doing the bullying defensively. But what Randle did to him yesterday, what he did to Scotty yesterday, was just it's got to be deflating because you're playing perfect defense. And I give even Darko credit because he changed up his defense. First time the Raptors played the Knicks, what the Raptors did was they wanted to force Randle to spin baseline and then consistently bring the help with Jakob Poeltl and essentially draw double teams. And Randle did a great job of picking the Raptors apart in that coverage, setting up guys like DiVincenzo, who had 7 threes in their first meeting. This time around, they're like, okay, we're instead going to send the double teams at Jalen Brunson. We are going to have Jakob show at the level of the three-point line, essentially wall him off so he can't get downhill. We'll even blitz him occasionally and get even more aggressive. But what we're going to do is then if Jakob's going to double on Brunson, we're going to have to play Randle straight up. And that's what I wanted to see from the first meeting. And they also get killed in this matchup.
Well, the Knicks had like a little bit of a counter adjustment. And part of this was because you don't have Mitchell Robinson. And I mean, Jericho Sims was like precious levels of like if the first DHO isn't there, like standing there unsure of what to do with the ball. Like I don't think he trusted himself to dribble really or make any plays. He fit in defensively, but like was a non-threat offensively. But something they did in the second half was noticing what you're saying. Even with Randall going against that, they started having Randall screen, and the Raptors aren't going to switch that. They're going to have Schroeder fought over against Brunson most of the night. You're not going to want to switch that because Randall's such a bad mismatch against Schroeder. And then what that does, though, is if Randall pick and pops, even if you don't care that much about his three, that means when Brunson tries to drive on Schroeder to the middle, OG, who is Randall's man, has to show at the nail because he's the help assignment to wall to make sure Brunson can't get paint. And then Brunson would quickly hit it to Randall. And as OG recovered, Randall's at a speed disadvantage against OG, but he gets that first quick right off the catch, gets the like small head start as OG's recovering back to him, and it puts OG behind the 8 ball a little bit, trying to take away Randall's space, or at least you got to meet him a little lower in the paint than you would otherwise. So it was a small counter adjustment for the Knicks, and like obviously it cramps your spacing because Jericho Sims is then just sitting in the dunker.
Whatever.
But it was smart to put Randall into those actions because you got to send at least 1.5 guys to Brunson and 1.5 guys to Randall, and on a high pick and roll where the floor is spaced with 2 corner shooters and a dunker spot guy, there's no third man to help in that action.
Yeah. That's what happens when you have tactics and also a real clarity in how you want to run your offense.
Yo, the Knicks almost shot 60, 60, 60.
They really did almost. They shot almost better on 2s and 3s than free throws.
Yeah.
They did
60.5% from the field, 58.6 from 3. And then 15 of 23, 65% from free throw line.
And that, I mean, obviously we can nitpick the defense. We can hat tip to Randall or whatever. Even if the Raptors had done some other things better. And like we talked yesterday about how the Knicks lead the league in winning the possession battle. They're the #1 rebounding team on both ends of the floor. They're a top 11 in turnover rate at both ends of the floor. Nobody gets more shooting possessions than the Knicks. The Raptors got 13 more shooting possessions than the Knicks yesterday. They beat them at their own game. They went 2022, 2023 Raptors, 17 offensive rebounds, only turned the ball over 10 times, got way more shots, got to the free throw line more. They shot 12 percentage points worse on field goals, 22 percentage point worse on threes.
Yeah.
That's you needed all 13 of those possessions and probably a couple more.
This is the funny thing about the Raptors is like from their meeting against the Knicks like 2 weeks ago, they changed up a lot of what they did defensively. They even had to start the game OG on Brunson for a little bit. And of course they changed with the Randall coverages. And by the way, the Knicks are actually without, compared to last game, they don't have Robinson, they don't have Emmanuel Quickly, who would obviously be the starting point guard on the Raptors if you weren't even available.
McBride had a couple really nice minutes, especially in the second half there. Like the start of the fourth quarter was a lot of McBride. But yeah, you're down 2 key rotation pieces, and you still look like maybe the deepest team in the league, down 2 guys.
Right. And then you see the Raptors, they play differently, as you mentioned. They changed up their strategy. They try a couple different things. First half, obviously, the issue was the Raptors couldn't shoot the 3 well. They were 5 of 22 from 3. They were 7 of 14 from the foul line even, so just all sorts of shooting was off. But second half, they do hit the 3s at a decent rate. When you look at the end of the day, you're like, well, the Raptors made 14 threes.
They went 9 of 17 in the second half.
Yeah, that was what got them back into the game in the third quarters. They made 6 threes in the third. It just all doesn't matter.
They gave up 70 points in the second half.
And then when you look at the bigger picture in terms of season over season, they obviously tried the Knicks approach last year, like Nick Nurse's approach, not the Knicks approach with the K. And now they're under Darko, and it's the same roster. It's just the roster is the issue.
The Raptors lose.
Like
again.
And we're back in the same spot again.
And I think it was I might be off by a game here, but I believe it's the 6th time in 7 games that the starters have lost their minutes. As a unit. Darko got asked about that again at practice today, by the way. I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, yes, they're considering things and looking at things, but he wants to give it another game or 2 because, those guys are committed to trying to fix the issue.
It's not like Darko looking at the bench and seeing like a charcuterie board or something of options, man.
Yeah, it's true. He doesn't have Emmanuel Quickly, Josh Hart, Isaiah Hartenstein.
He got Emmanuel slowly if he wants Otto Porter.
By the way, Boucher and Porter both didn't practice today. Boucher left last night's game with a thigh contusion. So there's the full, those are your full practice updates, as well as Pascal talking about being a boxer and getting knocked down and you can't find your mouth guard.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, apparently.
Oh. Hey, at least Pascal, Scotty, and OG all scored 20 plus yesterday. Put the banner up.
Let's go.
The Raptors lose.
Does that count for pizza too? 3 straight 20s?
Even Schroeder got 22. 4 guys in their 20s.
Yeah.
Damn.
You got a good Malachi game and still couldn't win.
Man, I was seeing people freaking out. I think maybe a little bit on the broadcast too about how great Malachi was playing, and I'm like, he's playing a decent enough game.
He had 10 points, 4 dimes, and like some pretty good defense. He also had 3 turnovers, including I think you tweeted about one. Like there was the 3-on-1 fast break, but there was the pass to the nobody in the corner.
Yeah,
pass to nobody in the corner.
Like
the
I do think that
23-24 Raptors.
the bar is very low for Flynn, but
bar's
also
literally
like
on the floor, man.
we're also coming off of like a stretch of games where Dennis Schroeder didn't play very well. Much better offensively last night, but not a good night defensively for him. And when it's a night where Gary Trent Jr. is also pretty bad, you're stretching for like who. Like they ended up closing with Precious, not Jakob, because they just need to try something other than that starting 5. But it's what you're saying. There's not a charcuterie board of options there. There's a Lunchables,
It's not even
not a
Lunchables.
charcuterie board.
They only got the crackers too, man, in the Lunchables. There's no meat on that, man. They got a Kit Kat, maybe.
Yeah, honestly, the difference in the benches was huge. I think the starting unit definitely needs to guard better. I mean, like,
Yeah, you think?
but at
They're
least
also
they were
not
able
scoring
to perform.
well. They did yesterday because of the third quarter
Yeah.
boost, and OG got really hot. But like on the season, they have one of the worst offensive ratings of any like super high usage unit.
Yeah,
They're just terrible on both ends of the floor.
Yeah.
it
If
just
you
doesn't
add
really
it all
matter.
up.
They play better offensively. Their defense gets worse. They play better defensively. Their offense gets worse.
Yeah.
They try different strategies. They lose in a different way.
Yeah.
They tried this strategy. They lose in a different
And
way.
they did all
It's
those
actually
things
kinda
in
hilarious.
one game last night.
Yeah.
Like first
Yeah,
half,
they
it's
did.
like,
They
oh
did.
yeah, we'll win the possession battle. Oh, we
Yeah.
can't shoot it all. Then it's like we'll get hot. Okay, the defense slid.
Yep.
Like the transition game wasn't there. Again, the transition stuff's driving me nuts because, like we've talked about, the half court stuff. You know, Julius Randle's going to hit some tough shots against you. Good offense, whatever. But the fact that you've had this huge slide in transition defense, and like the Knicks, who do not care to run, quickly pushes the pace. Everyone else is like, I will glacially glide up the court and get into our sets. And they scored 1.7 points per transition opportunity yesterday.
Josh Hart had so many push the break, finish, or kick out.
And offensive rebounds. He was just like a pure like Raptors inattention merchant.
Yeah, and you know, when we started the season with Patrick Beverley randomly saying Raptors got no dogs, it does linger in your mind because like some games I'm like, okay, you know, who was going to be that energy, that difference maker, who's going to lift them up? You know, again, previous years you would think back to Kyle Lowry would literally always be that kind of guy. Especially it's like, okay, game in mid-December, it's like, okay, you probably need a little pick-me-up. Who's going to provide that like jolt of energy? And Josh Hart came in the game and did that. He almost had a triple-double on the Raptors.
Yeah.
Which is absurd. Like, he doesn't even have the ball very much for a triple-double. But you got to credit to him because he made all those plays. And it's like, yeah, when you think back to the no dogs kind of comment, it's like, yeah, the Knicks had dogs and the Raptors really didn't. And like, that's not the whole thing. The Knicks also shot really well from 3 once again. And I'm sure that, you know, the next game they go into, they probably won't hit 60% from 3, but they probably also won't play against a defense that played as like gingerly and as soft as the Raptors. There were 2 times where Julius Randle stuck on a pivot, like literally picked the ball up and everything. He's just pivoting. 2 times he split a double team because Jakob came too like lightly with the double team. Like, you're 7 foot. You're just like 250 pounds.
Once
7
you've
foot.
picked up your dribble and you don't have an eye line to the basket and there's an extra body there, you should not be able to peek out enough to find a kick out pass. By the way, they play Utah next, so they might actually have a defense as soft as the Raptors in their next game, but not for very long. The other thing, like you talk about this kind of wraps the bench and the shooting stuff all into one. Like last time the Raptors played the Knicks, Dante DiVincenzo hit 7 threes off the bench. Today he starts, or yesterday he starts.
I didn't even notice him yesterday.
He had 5 assists, but like he only hit 1 3. And then it's like, oh, Quentin Grimes, the guy who he just jumped in the starting lineup, he's going to bank 5 threes on you. So, yeah, I guess you're welcome to the Knicks from the Raptors for letting Quentin Grimes find it and get it going a little bit here the last couple games.
Yeah, how many Knicks bench players would you take before you take one Raptors bench player? Like if you line up all the bench players
probably
from both
7
teams.
without even looking. Yeah.
At least 4.
Okay, so Josh Hart, absolutely.
Josh Hart, absolutely.
Hardenstein would
absolutely.
start. Yeah, he would start.
Quentin Grimes.
Grimes, I would take.
Yeah,
absolutely.
McBride.
Normally they have Quickly.
Normally they have Quickly, who obviously, so that's 4
I'll take
automatically.
McBride too.
You take McBride over anybody on the Raptors bench?
Yeah, sure. At this point, yeah.
I don't know that I've seen enough. I
Would
think.
You know what? You take Evan Fournier over.
Has he played this year?
No, he hasn't. But quality of
the
player
only
wise.
Evan Fournier problem is just his contract, I feel like.
Yeah.
Well, you also can't Google his name.
Yeah, that too.
You guys, he's only 31.
No.
He's a new Otto Porter.
He's their Otto?
He's Otto Porter Jr.
Also, a weird thing that comes up every time the Raptors play the Knicks is like Julius Randle being a little bit younger than Pascal always just like disrupts me.
People forget Julius Randle started his career and immediately broke his leg. I think that's what kind of like
first game, right?
Yeah, it was like set his career.
Oh yeah, that was crazy. But guys,
but he's able to persevere.
The storyline to keep an eye on here. So the Pistons lost their 20th straight game yesterday.
Okay,
and the NBA record for longest losing streak is 28. Okay,
who set the record?
I believe the last time was the Sixers. Process Sixers.
So
here's the next 8 games for the Pistons to tie the record: Philly,
loss,
Milwaukee,
loss,
Atlanta,
loss,
Utah,
loss,
Brooklyn,
loss,
loss, Boston,
loss.
So if they lose all those, they'll tie at 28.
Okay,
and you know who they'll be playing to break the record?
No,
the Toronto Raptors.
No,
in Detroit, December 30th.
I'm gonna be so nervous, man.
If it is for the streak,
yo,
can we charter a bus and go?
Yes.
Okay.
Also, I'm contesting that's the record.
Is it a different one?
It was split over 2 seasons. I don't think that counts.
Is that what they're doing? Okay. Yeah, sorry. I literally just did a basic
season
Google
is
search.
26, which the Process Sixers also did. So did the LeBron just went to the Heat Cleveland Cavaliers.
But for the record, if they get to 28, that's what they're going to like talk about.
Oh,
like it's the longest streak across 2 seasons.
Yeah.
And the Raptors.
No, they're going to earn this.
Yeah.
I'm just.
And we should go to Detroit. I really do want to go for this.
Wow.
Yeah. What would you do if the Raptors
the Toronto
fall to the Pistons?
Toronto Raptors are going to get more Crim's Chump of the Week on on Detroit Cable News.
I'm going to eat some Wingstop. That's what I'm going to do. Because the Pistons promotion is if the Pistons win flat, you get 5 free wings.
Yes.
So, it's the same promotion as Darko.
People have been starving. And the funniest thing is for the longest time, the last 2 weeks, the Pistons social media team on their graphic, on the final score graphic, they kept putting the Wingstop right underneath the team's logo. So it looked like the other team's logo. So it looked like Wingstop was beating the Pistons every game. So I finally,
sure they could get 5
so
Wingstops
yesterday they
before
finally moved the logo to the bottom left corner, so people couldn't make jokes anymore.
At a certain point, because obviously you sign these sponsorship deals, and it's like, you know, you don't anticipate them losing 20 games in a row.
No,
but at certain points you're like, all right, like we're gonna have to change.
And at a certain point, you gotta
Wingstop had to make.
You gotta flip it and be like, free wings if they lose. Like just free wings if they lose.
These are hilarious things, like when, like you're saying, like where the lines just change a little bit or the team is different. Like remember the championship year, and Alex, I believe your mom really appreciated this. Raptors fans were getting something free every game because they would hit 12 threes every single game. And then I remember the Jays used to give away pizza if they recorded 7 strikeouts in a game. But the strikeout environment in baseball over the last couple of years has exploded. Every team strikes out 7 times every game now.
You know, Bo Bichette comes out the bat like at least 5 times a game.
You know the thing. This will never happen, but I would love to interview the Detroit Pistons social media person.
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, every game, they're just like, oh, Isaiah Stewart with the hustle play. And then final, 137-90.
Wingstop.
I mean, if you wanted to interview the closest thing to that, you could talk to the Raptors 905 social person. Who's probably having a
No, I want to sit down with the Pistons and the Wizards social media person and just, like, have a real talk.
By the way, how you doing?
Pistons, Wizards, Spurs.
Yes.
Yeah.
2-49 combined since November 2nd.
Yeah. And they're not tanking.
One of those wins is against each other.
Yeah. And they're not that's the thing. They're not tanking this early in the season. Obviously, they didn't intend to be like competitive and good teams, but like they're not intentionally they're just actively losing all of these games.
Yeah. We're trying and we're losing. That's what you're saying.
I have one last Raptors note before we break, because we got Coach David Thorpe on the other side. Since November 15th, so we're looking at about a month worth now, the Raptors are 24th in defense.
Yeah, checks out.
Like, this isn't they've slid from a top 5 defense to a top 10 or an average defense. They have been downright a bad defense over the last month now. It's
the Raptors are
pretty concerning.
The Raptors are like a bottom 5 NBA team right now.
The defense side just doesn't make sense to me. Like they have the personnel. They did it at the start of the season. Don't really understand how it slides to 24th over a 13-game chunk.
Okay, here's me as the coach of this show, knowing how to put the talent in the right positions. Blake, I'm going to ask you how much of this is tactically, and then Alex, I'm going to ask you afterwards how much of this is them just checking out.
Yeah, I mean,
thanks, coach.
Not a ton of it is tactically, unless we're accusing like poor execution to tactics. Like, I don't think they're really doing that much that I like have huge issue with game to game. And like you said, last night they threw a bunch of different stuff at the Knicks, and it just like none of it didn't work. I don't think getting back in transition and picking someone up is, or like filling to the paint if you're the second guy, picking up the trail shooter if you're a late man back. Like, I don't think that stuff is tactics. I think that's attention and energy and focus.
So do you see attention, energy, and focus when you see the Raptors defend?
I don't think they're checking out. They're just not good enough.
What, like
they're not checking out.
Getting back in transition is not like good or bad.
Yeah, I get it, man. Some of that you can blame on.
They have the speed to do it.
Some of that you can blame on the effort, but they're just not good enough. If you strip out like the teams that we just talked about, like okay, Detroit, Washington, put the Spurs in there, probably like what
the
Portland.
Raptors. The Raptors' 3 marquee wins on the season. Give big comebacks against Washington and San Antonio.
If you think about all the teams that aren't trying to win right now, right?
Yeah.
The Raptors are the worst team that's trying to win right now. Like it's them in Chicago, I think.
You know, Chicago's only a half game behind the Raptors. Right?
Yeah, I'm aware.
And they took Milwaukee to overtime.
So the Raptors are technically the worst team that is actually trying to do something.
And I told you guys this last week when we did Triple N. Like, if you look, I mean, at this point, I was citing like an analytic metric that adjusts for strength of schedule and stuff, but it's actually done this just in terms of score margin now, like how much you're getting outscored. There are 21 teams that are average-ish to can be title contenders. And the Hawks are a bit weird there because they're 4 games under 500, but they've basically played even. They've been a little unlucky. But there are 21 teams like that. There are 8 teams at the bottom who are obviously very, very bad. Now, that includes a Bulls team that had won 4 in a row until last night, so maybe they upgrade. But then the Raptors are in a tier of their own, sitting at 22nd.
Nice.
21 teams that are real, 7 teams that are not real, and then the Raptors and the Bulls. We can put them in a co-tier, maybe. It is a weird spot to be in.
Yeah, and this is not to say the Raptors can't compete with these teams. Like, the Raptors were in a 2-possession game with the Knicks at the end, but the Knicks were also in control the whole way.
2 possessions.
Yeah, that's right. That's what
they're always 2 possessions from being 2 possessions away. That's the whole squad.
That is the whole squad, man.
Anyways, we got David Thorpe.
We also have some lawsuit stuff, but we will discuss that later on in segment 3. But we're going to take this break. I've been your host, Willu. You've been listening to the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Welcome back to the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. I'm your host, Wim Lu. We're working to get Coach David Thorpe of TrueHoop on the line, and David is there. Coach, how you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay. Personally, I'm okay. Obviously, the Raptors have not been so flattering these last couple of games. They're on a 4-game losing streak. They lost 6 of 7. And I think one of the things that's been really concerning is just that, the starting lineup has been trending downward almost collectively, it feels like. So, Coach, I wanted to start with you there because there was already a discussion today with Coach Darko at practice about the idea of, will you change the starting lineup? And his answer was he kind of wants to give it another game or 2. Now, I don't know what he's going to see another game or 2, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Raptors starting group.
I mean, to defend Darko is to suggest that most coaches are loath for change. He's no different than most other guys. So I understand that part. The answer isn't so smart. A game or 2 when you're 20 games in. That makes no sense at all. But, they don't like to change things much. Having watched that team play some, including I think I watched the whole game last night. I definitely think there should be a change. And if they were winning games, I still think they should be a change. I think there's a better formula than what they're using. But in light of what's happening there, it makes no sense to me. But listen, the elephant in the room, Will, and you may know this, is your head coach is in love with your point guard. So if you think Dennis Schroeder's your answer, but then keep starting him and make some other changes. But the rest of the free world doesn't think he's the answer. He has never been the answer. He is a nice off-the-bench guy, in my opinion. He's a very good, very talented player that I don't think 29 other teams would want starting and running their show. And I'm not blaming him, by the way. He ain't the only problem on the team. But that it begins and ends with the fact that you have a very, very close relationship between an enigmatic, challenging guard that's always driven teams crazy and a head coach in his first year who trusts one guy, and that's him. That's how I see it anyway.
Yeah, I was going to ask you this later on, but maybe we'll just get to it now. If you're a new coach coming into an existing team, like Darko is, if you also are a new head coach in the sense that you haven't coached in the NBA as a head coach, you've been obviously a long-time assistant.
Right.
Because I know you also advise coaches around the league, like, what would you have advised him to do coming into this scenario? Because it's obviously quite challenging, especially when you also consider the fact that a lot of the change this season was supposed to come just on the coaching front.
Well, I know I would have started by saying in your media day press conference, don't attack the best player on your team. That is never a good starting place.
Yeah. Okay.
And I don't remember anymore exactly what he said, but I remember, I'm not sure I ever really knew exactly what he said, but I know how people reacted in my world of they're calling Pascal Siakam selfish. I don't know what Darko said, actually. I'm sure I once did. I just don't remember. It was back in October, late September. That doesn't make any sense. I don't think anyone thinks he's struggling to shoot the ball, but no one ever thinks Pascal is selfish or has played selfishly. So I thought that was a very odd place to begin. And quite frankly, I think I often say how you start is how you finish. Well, you started off on the wrong foot, buddy, and it hasn't gotten any better. Siakam has found a way to really make an impact. And depending on the metrics you use, has become kind of the player that you expected him to be, despite the offense changing and everything else. I don't think the rest of the team can say that, although Scotty certainly had a great start and has been scintillating sometimes since he's not been as good overall, which is to be expected. Teams are going to adjust what they're doing based on their film and everything. But I definitely would say to him, you can't rely on Dennis Schroeder as if he's Chris Paul or Fred VanVleet. He just isn't that guy. And he's more talented than Fred, to be honest with you. I was really taken with him when he was at OKC. And I remember writing once for TrueHoop, actually, so it wasn't that long ago, when they were in the bubble, that he was going to be the difference. And I don't remember if they were playing Houston or who they were playing. It was a 7-game series. OKC lost in game 7. And I thought Dennis was going to be the reason why they won the series because I didn't think anyone could guard him. And he kind of figured out over the course of the 7 games that, you know what, no one really can guard me. But he's not a decision maker. He's not a reliable character to run a team. There's a lot of guys that I feel like are better off just ask them to score. I say this about Zach LaVine, who's a very talented player and someone I'm fond of as an analyst and a fan of how much he loves the game. But I just don't think he can be your quarterback and get consistency. Not a surprise if the Bulls are playing their best basketball with him being out, even though he is one of their better players. I think trusting Dennis to be the face of your offense, that's not to say he's their best player or their franchise player, but he's kind of the guy that runs the team, and I think that's silly. No one in the league thinks that about him, and yet Toronto is where he is because they've made the decision to let him be that guy.
Yeah, I think you are seeing at the start of the year, Dennis was actually more involved, like even touches per game, things like that. He was like top 10 in the league pretty consistently in how much he got the ball per game. It's come back down now where he's sort of closer to 20th, even trending towards the 30th range in the league. But that's because his minutes have also come down in addition to other adjustments being made. I think what's interesting to watch right now is that a lot of other teams are just going under so often. And I think he started the season well. He continued the hot shooting from the World Cup. But now that you're seeing a lot of teams go under on Dennis and him not really being able to punish that kind of coverage, you're seeing the whole starting group really crater offensively. And I guess I'm curious to hear your perspective because you cover the whole league. How many other teams in the NBA have this similar problem where their starting point guard is somebody that teams go under on a consistent basis?
Well, I'm going to push back on this one thing.
Okay.
Not many, by the way, not many, but I'm going to push back on the idea that is the bigger problem. To me, the problem is your quarterback is your lead decision maker when the ball's in his hands at time. And so what most players do is they recognize I'm going to get the ball, and it could be me that's doing it, to a player in best position to either score or draw enough because of gravity, draw enough help to make easy plays out over and over and over again, relentlessly so. You'll if you look back in the history, and I know you know the game, from Chris Paul to LeBron James, both of them have, I think, often been too unselfish that way in that they're trying to get other guys involved, and yet their teams weren't good enough to be able to go through stretches where they just weren't scoring very much because they were getting the ball to other people. And now they've got to make these heroic comebacks. And LeBron was even guilty of that in the playoffs when they won a couple years ago. He finally stopped doing it. In fact, I wrote an article, and I bet he saw it because we have a lot of mutual friends. And I'm sure I was the only one saying, LeBron, you can't wait till halftime to decide to impose your will full time. And so Dennis, to me, Scotty will be rolling, or Siakam will be rolling, or even sometimes OG is rolling. And Dennis, after 3 or 4 possessions, and those guys are still being guarded by the same people, will make sure someone else gets the ball because everyone else has to eat. No, this is a monarchy. It's not a democracy. You got to feed the king, feed the king, feed the king. And when the king is gorged because there's so much help coming, everyone's far more open than you just making sure everyone feels like they got to touch the ball. If indeed he's thinking that. I've been told by people that he's not even thinking that far. He's just not thinking at all. I don't know the answer to either one of those things. I just know I'll go through stretches watching the Raptors play where, compared to some of the other teams I follow all the time, which are most of the good teams in the league, if not all of them, they don't go very long without making their best offensive player having the ball at a good part on the floor or in a place where you can get to a good spot on the floor and then things open up. And just watching, I mean, Scotty and Pascal both are not easy to guard one-on-one depending on where they are on the court. They're much easier in some areas than others. And both are super willing passers, 167, 169. Plus, they get people open all the time. It may look a little weird and clunky, but the bottom line is the ball is being moved to an open guy, and then you play. Seth Greenberg, the ESPN announcer, used to be a coach. He used to say, you create the first double team, and then the game really starts.
Yeah.
You know, Steve Kerr says you got to get the first domino to fall. Same idea. Siakam and Barnes are the best at that, and you go through stretches in games where they just don't literally touch the ball. It was worse early in the season with Siakam's getting it very little, and you can look at the numbers for that early November or whatever. And then that was December. That was Schroeder's time. That's changed for the betterment of the team. But I just don't think Dennis thinks that way. And again, Lou Williams is a great player. He was not someone you would ask to quarterback your team. Jamal Crawford, great player. Not someone you would ask to quarterback your team. The Raptors have a quarterback that I don't think thinks the game that way and are running an offense where the point guard is super important, that primary ball handler, to make sure the ball is delivered to where it needs to go. And I think that's where it starts offensively with their flaws.
Okay. That's interesting. I didn't think about it in those terms, but I do agree with you because, you know, you looked at, for example, the Knicks that they played against yesterday. Knicks have a very good clarity in terms of what they want to do on offense.
Very much so.
They're going to give it to Randall, or they're going to run a pick and roll with Brunson. They'll see what the defense does. Do they switch? Do they give up a mismatch? And then they'll just attack. And then everyone else is just waiting and cutting and figuring out a way to get themselves open or crashing the glass. It's very, very clear. It's not the most complicated. It's almost so simple. But you compare that to the Raptors, where it's like Raptors will run more intricate things than the Knicks. They ran more intricate things than the Knicks yesterday. But A, because of a lack of shooting, but also B, because when you're sharing the ball like that, you're also saying that your best player or whoever creates the best advantages don't get the ball as much. Yeah. So it's just a function of the the other thing with the starting group, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts, is on Jakob Poeltl. Feels like he's in the way a lot of the time. Now, I get the non-shooting component. I even get the fact that he doesn't really jump and he doesn't really have the ability to finish through contact. There should have been multiple and ones he finished yesterday. But how do you see his fit with the starting group? Because we see often Darko takes him out late in games, including yesterday.
I'm a big fan of Jakob Poeltl and spent the morning on a trade machine. He can't be traded to January 15, but for TrueHoop, I'm writing an article about I think that I don't do this a lot, but my Henry Abbott, the founder, wanted me to write about who can make a deal now to get themselves in position to win in May and June, because it's kind of musical chairs. Someone's gonna be left out of the arms race of adding assets to your team. And Toronto is a team with Pascal and OG and Gary and Jakob. Everyone but Scotty, really. I don't think Dennis is going to have much of a trade value. They can get a lot of teams really, really rich. And it's not easy because you need to have, in order for Jakob to be the 5 that I think he can be at his best, you need to have a really sweet shooting 4. And that's not what Siakam is right now. Siakam, as some people have written, he's the best post player in the league. He's amongst the best post players. especially because he doesn't have to be in the post to score down there. He's got that versatility to start on the perimeter. And so I always say he can take your big guy out from the perimeter and attack him, and he can bully ball your big wings and your guards. Not a lot of guys can do that. And those that can are all-stars. But if you watch the Raptors play, frequently, the moment Siakam has the ball, and this is the case for Scotty, if he gets it inside 18, 16 feet, there is Pirtle's man sitting under the rim. He'll pop out for a moment, and he comes right back in all the time. And so I think that's a bad combination. So I'm a Pirtle fan. The team played much better last year when they got him. I think, as you know, they played like a playoff team once they had him. But this iteration with Dennis at 1 instead of Fred, with the way Gary's playing currently, I don't think anything's permanent. Things can go up and down, or they can continue to trend up. They continue to trend down. All these options. This iteration is bad. That spacing is only made worse with a 4 that can't shoot, a 5 that doesn't try to shoot, and a 1 that is not a great shooter. And I would say, in Siakam's case, at least you can let him play in the corner some, where he's starting to shoot a little bit better. He's not shooting much elsewhere. You can't do that with Pirtle at all. He's just not a threat. He's not going to shoot the ball. So you gotta find a really, really sweet shooting 4 if you best want to take advantage of Jakob at the 5.
OKC would be kind of nice for him if you could play him alongside of Chet, because I don't think Chet should be the full-time 5 all the time. Matchup wise, I think you can do it.
You think Pirtle next to Chet?
Yeah, in OKC, I like that kind of fit, that kind of idea.
Yeah, I like Siakam there better.
Okay, I'm sure they will. I'm sure they do too. Sure they do, Coach. That will be it's already such a difficult team to stop. You add in a consistent post scorer. I mean, wow. Well, we'll see. We'll see if there's a potential move to be made there. In the meantime, obviously Scotty and Pascal are also on the team. I think honestly, you look at both of them, they made improvements over last season in certain areas. For Scotty, I think it's in more areas. I think he's more engaged consistently. He's shooting the ball much better. He's so active in wanting to shoot the ball now too. Any opponent going under on him, he will just say, forget what the offense is saying. If you go under on me, I'm just going to take the 3, and it's exactly the right basketball play. He's looking for it more aggressively. Yesterday, he had 8 threes attempted. He made 3. Like, they didn't have any games like that from him last year outside of like 1 or 2 rarities. That's on a consistent more basis. And I think for Pascal, too, is like obviously the 3-point shooting isn't really there, but you go back the last 16 games, Pascal's shooting 62% on 2-point shots, and these are mostly self-generated looks. So what are you seeing that's improving from both of those guys offensively this season?
Well, I'll reinforce what you said, but first I will say this. If you asked me before about Darko, to me, everything should begin with how do I get those guys the ball more and better spots together?
Yeah.
They can be an incredibly dynamic and unique duo, right? Tatum and Brown have their own thing going on. They're incredible. Kawhi and PG, incredible. Siakam and Barnes are as a twosome are better passers than those other duos. Those other duos are good passers.
Yeah.
Barnes and Siakam are really gifted passers and very willing passers. So I'd like to see a lot more of both of them getting in the middle of the court and then playing high-low with each other. They don't do that very much, again, because of Pirtle's presence. That's really a problem. So get Pirtle out pretty quickly, and you can play a little differently. I think the biggest thing with Scotty is what we saw a little bit as a rookie. He's just better at it now. It's just pure assertiveness and aggressiveness. Scotty is a very competitive guy. Remember, I loved him coming out of college the one year I watched him, and really got to know his game well just from afar. It was COVID, so I didn't go to a single game that year. My son was just a freshman. He's asserting himself like never before. He more than then when he was a rookie, and he's better at it. He's just much better at it. And Darko has the ball in his hands more. The team has the ball in his hands more, so that's a good thing. Very happy with him defensively also.
Oh, yeah. I
think Scotty has really challenged himself defensively. The metrics are weird. Some metrics have Scotty being incredible. Some have him being pretty bad. We actually, on my show, we're going to have a couple of data analysts come on, pretty well-known guys, to explain what the hell's going on.
Okay.
How is cleaning the glass have Scotty rated so low, and Taylor Star dunks and threes have him rated so highly? I don't understand why. He's the same player, the same data.
Yeah.
But I think he projects exactly what I thought when he came out. He's going to be a multiple-time All-Star, many, many times over. And if he continues to shoot like this And that's an important thing because not everyone finishes as well as they start even over the course of 8 weeks or so. It happens where you kind of lose it and you don't get it back. But let's assume that he keeps it up. I think he's got all NBA in his future. It won't be this year, I don't think. The team isn't good enough anyway. In Siakam's case, listen, when you start day one, and you and I've talked about this off air, on day one, your coach is calling you selfish and your team doesn't give you an extension despite the kind of season. Last year the team was terrible, and Pascal the same year as he did the year before, metrically speaking, when he was all NBA. And so he started off badly, and that wasn't a good start. And yet he's, like you said, he's found a way to continue to impact games, score 20 plus a night on most nights. I think he's playing the best defense since he's played in maybe 6 seasons, and can get better, in my opinion. And yet wants to fit in. Because he isn't shooting the 3 at all well. He's even more looking to pass quickly, and has a lot of gravity, and he's got a great brain. So Pascal finds himself all the time in great positions. I noticed this last night, and he's got a little Draymond Green in him now, where he's literally playing to create for others, and on a better team of shooters, I think he'd be even more capable of finding holes for himself. He's scoring. What you just said is incredible. 60%, and almost nothing is easy.
Yeah.
They don't run any special high-lows for him anymore.
Yeah.
Where he can get take advantage of and score at the rim.
The run-out layups that with Kyle Lowry, those are gone too. Like, it's just he's creating 60% shots all the time.
Right. But early in the season, though, he was getting early offense post-ups, steal scores. As long as Dennis doesn't let him throw that like Scotty does. Scotty will throw it more. So that they need to find more of that. But I still think the two of them together, which is why I think Masai first envisioned this whole thing, those two guys plus OG would be a very unique and I think successful trio. The Pirtle sign, which I understood, Pascal was shooting it better last year. That has not worked out great so far. And then the Dennis thing, I went into the season, I'm sure I probably did this show. I don't think y'all have a point guard. I still say that. I don't think Dennis is that quarterback that you need. So I'd hate for him to break things up, him being Masai, but without getting a real point guard there to see what they could do with a true pick and roll leader, a surgical guy. But nevertheless, with Dennis there, I think that some changes should be made.
Yeah. All right, Coach, we've run out of time. Appreciate you always for joining the show, making time. And if people haven't listened or subscribed to TrueHoop, they should do it because they get your insight. And, honestly, I appreciate that you're more blunt than most people too, because you've been around this thing a long time. You work with a lot of players and coaches and, agents and teams call you all the time. And you know what? To be able to just tell it as it is, I think it actually is very helpful sometimes. So appreciate you, Coach.
I appreciate it as well. Have a good day.
All right. That was Coach David Thorpe calling in from Florida. And I think that it's good to get an outsider's perspective on the Raptors too, because we get in every day. Honestly, it's so funny that we're repeating ourselves all the time because you end up getting into positions where you're like, I don't want to just like come in every day to kill them. Is there a different angle or perspective? It's good to get the outsider's perspective because they don't have that kind of investment that we do in this team every single day. And you could look at it much more clearly. And I agree. It's not the greatest fit. If you were to envision 2 guys at center and at point guard to surround Pascal, OG, and Scotty and their skill set, you would not be picking the 2 that they have picked. And so how they get out of that is going to be the question. But you know what? That's why the front office is one of the best paid in the entire league to solve a problem like that. So we're going to take another break. I've been your host, Willow. You've been listening to The Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Welcome back to The Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. I'm your host, Wayne Liu. Joining me for segment 3 are my co-hosts, Alex Wong, Blake Murphy. Blake, what you got for me?
Okay, so Coach David Thorpe in that segment, great segment between you guys.
He lit it up, man. I didn't do anything. I was just here. I was a bystander, just to be clear.
You were doing what a point guard's supposed to do.
Yeah. Feed the man who's
dish
hot,
the rock and get off ball, space out, relocate. No, but one thing that coach said in there that they're doing on a future episode is taking a look at why some places rate Scotty as a really good defender this year, why some places don't. I can explain that pretty quickly.
Okay.
So a site like Cleaning the Glass is looking at, it's purely descriptive. It's telling you what has happened, and it dings Scotty because it doesn't control for the fact that Scotty is playing in those 4-man bench units a lot. So all cleaning the glass looks at is, hey, when Scotty was off the floor, the Raptors with, 4 starters or Pascal, OG, and a couple bench pieces did this, this, and this. Mm-hmm. And then when it was Scotty back on the floor, regardless of who he's with, this, and this happened. So if that's all you do, if you look at, net rating only, well, Pascal's, playing a different share of minutes with different line mates. Scotty is playing the lesser end of that and the tougher end of that. Cleaning the glass only cares about describing what's happened. Now, what a site like Dunks and Threes, and I've referenced EPM on here before, estimated plus minus, the math gets really messy, but they're taking not only play-by-play data and box score data, but they are looking at all those lineups and regressing it against years and years of lineup data. So it can look at, hey, if Scotty's doing this, and this happened when Scotty's on the floor, but what happened when Scotty was on the floor and Malachi Flynn was on the floor with other people, or Precious Achiuwa was on the floor with other people? And they use something called a ridge regression to try to balance out the fact that, some guys are going to drive your lineup one way, some guys are going to drive them the other. So when you filter all of that out and you have this box score component where Scotty is obviously among the league leaders in blocks plus steals this year, then when you're controlling for who you're playing with and what situations you're in, then Scotty comes out looking really good, which I think backs up what we've been seeing. We've talked a bunch about how the Scotty and bench lineups aren't really, certainly aren't productive, but also aren't putting guys in the best situations to succeed. So yeah, that's the answer as to why some metrics will look at Scotty and be like, he's been awesome. Mm-hmm. Some will look at him and be like, well, things have gone poorly when he's on the floor relative to other lineups.
Interesting.
This is why I tend to trust EPM more.
That makes sense.
Over a large enough sample. You don't want to look at things too noisy early in the season, but something that regresses against prior year's data, something that regresses and tries to account for the quality of teammate you're playing with. Did an opponent get hot? Things like that. You get a little more context in there. They're certainly not be all end alls. You would not look at it and be like, well, Scotty Barnes is 13th in EPM, so he's the 13th best player in basketball.
I think it has him as like a 99th percentile defender right now.
Yeah, he's 13th overall in EPM, and he's the Raptors' best player on both ends in terms of impact. Him and OG keep trading first and second in defensive impact on the Raptors. But either way, something like that would certainly, be more accurate if you were going to pull some numbers to make those cases than, just looking at net rating or on-off court stuff, gotcha. Because you need that context.
Well, that's good to know. It's good to know.
Have me on, Coach Thorpe.
The Raptors.
Yeah, sorry, that's hard to pivot out of, but
it's all good. It's all good. This is what we pay Alex Wong the big bucks for. Alex, what you got for us while I pour coffee? Big Head Coffee, by the way.
My salary's all
just for color once again.
Blake was referencing Pascal talking about a mouthpiece and boxing match. So just pulled the full quote via friend of the program, Eric Kareem. Pascal today said, quote, it's hard. The way I look at it, that's been in my life period. It's never been easy. Hey, you got to fight. There's going to be times where it's hard out there and you feel like you're getting knocked down every time you go out there. It feels like a boxing match where you get knocked down and everything. You can't see nothing. You're looking for your mouthpiece, trying to find anything on the floor, and the ref is counting, blood coming out of your mouth. And the thing about it is it's going to happen more than once.
Yo.
So, there we go. Somebody got a
I don't know how much
Holyfield's ears.
I don't know how much
like, guys,
boxing
3 more wins, party.
Yeah, I don't know how much boxing Pascal watches, but if that happens to you more than once in a fight, the ref's probably going to stop it. Like,
he might be watching.
Like, you might get the standing 10 count, but if the ref sees you lose your mouth guard and reach around unable to see because of blood in your eyes 2 or 3 times in a fight, I think it's getting called.
It's good that that's how he feels, at least metaphorically, in the game, because that's how it feels like physically for me to watch the game.
Oh, okay.
So, I see you. I feel, you know what? This question that you raised, Alex, along these lines is, what do the Raptors do the next time they win a game? Because obviously they're not going to just lose all the rest of the games here.
I wouldn't be that confident, but
the Raptors have been handing out this post-game chain.
Yeah, so is it weird after this 4-game losing streak?
Yeah.
They play Atlanta tomorrow.
So they're going to be like 10-14 if they win, for example, the next game.
And say tomorrow it's an uninspiring win. They barely hold on.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
the
They're
Hawks-
up 12, but
yeah,
the Hawks make a 10-point
make like
comeback.
a 10-0 run.
Hawks are like a bottom 5 defense. So this is who have the Raptors done this against
buddy.
this year?
Perfect.
Washington, San Antonio,
Yeah.
Detroit, the bottom defenses in the league.
Trey Young's, game-winning 3 just barely rims out. The Raps make a colossal error at the end, turn the ball over, but still win by 1. Like, how's Darko running into the locker room with that chain? Like, what's the energy? Yeah.
Hey guys, where's the party? Where's the party, everyone? We're 2 more wins away from a pizza party. Y'all want pepperoni? You guys want cheese? You guys want square slices?
Yo, how we feeling, man? How we feeling?
That's literally Darko coming in that locker room tomorrow, man. I'm telling you.
But this is a problem of like, so much of the conversations is around the vibe of the team and stuff. And like the vibe is always predicated on the quality of your team and the wins and losses.
We said this back in preseason, right? They won every preseason game, and we talked to Darko about it on this show.
Yeah.
Was like, okay, the vibes are good right now and everyone's happy, but like, how do you make sure that you manage that the first 4-game losing streak, or the first time someone gets pulled out of the starting lineup, or the first time someone's out of the rotation? And like, it's still probably too early to know how, like, it's early enough for things to feel bad.
Yeah.
It's probably not early enough for like leaks and stuff to start coming out.
Sure.
It was January last year, I think, when that stuff started happening, even though we could plainly see it earlier than that, like we can this year.
Can't wait
now
for
look,
the leaks to come out.
the chain in general, like a lot of teams around basketball, baseball, football, hockey, whatever, have, championship belt, team chain,
the Raptors
you get
did
the
that at
drumstick
practice.
for
Nick
player
Nurse
of the
had it.
game, whatever.
Nick Nurse literally had the WWE belt for who
For
got the most
practices.
deflections in practice.
But there's a danger in attaching the chain to wins.
Yes.
If you're not going to be winning a lot. When I think about championship belts, I remember the Detroit Pistons back in the day used to roll around with a belt because they were the champions. I know Mike Malone gives out a chain, I think, for the best defensive player, right? It's because they're a perennial, they're the champions as well. Like, if you attach a lot of this stuff to just wins and losses and stuff, and you're doing positive reinforcement, you throw out this carrot all the time. How are you ever going to throw out the stick, man? Like what are they supposed to do now that they're 9-14? They're supposed to still hand out the chain when they win once every 4 games? It's weird.
That's what I'm saying. It's going to be bad awkward when they hand out this chain. I'm just telling you.
Well, we're still handing out the chains every Friday, though. So
That's
we're
different.
taking tradition.
Well, we're not way under 500 and losing 6 of our
I
last
feel like
7 to
we go at
mediocre
least
teams in the
4-1
East.
every week. Wednesday shows sometimes
3
a
and 2,
little tough.
yeah, 3 and 2 I'll give us. But
Wednesday sometimes is tough, but
So you tell me we had 800 team, though. That's pretty good.
we're an 800 team, man.
That's pretty good.
we're the Timberwolves apparently.
Anyway, so I'm gonna do a bunch of
Rudy Gobert over here with his French press.
Wait.
Oh, I'm Kyle Anderson. Ni hao. We're gonna do a bunch of random pivots.
Please.
You want to pivot from your Team Canada jersey to another Team Canada
Shai
jersey? How we wanna do this?
Gilgeous-Alexander won the Northern Star Award yesterday, and then he celebrated by pulling up to the Thunder game in a Team Canada Wayne Gretzky jersey. Blake, you did predict this yesterday before we went on the program and found out. You said Shai was going to win. Who are the other contenders? Do you know?
Yeah, I mean, there were some. I saw some.
And by the way,
votes.
this is the award for best Canadian.
Yeah, so this is the Canadian
Best
Athlete of the
Canadian
Year.
athlete.
You would have known it as the Lou Marsh Award before that name got changed a couple years back.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of Canadian sports media. I don't know exactly who has a vote. I know Doug Smith and Bruce Arthur and Damian Cox are on the committee. I don't know who else is in there. I saw that there were
favorites. Sorry.
Yeah, there were at least votes
brother.
for Connor McDavid, who has the same thing every year where he's the best hockey player in the world, but Edmonton doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
So he's actually never won one, even though he'll be like the best hockey player of this
Connor
generation.
McDavid the Chris Paul hits a 3 to cut the Oilers lead to 43 of his generation?
He's Shohei Ohtani, man.
Yeah.
Is he
He's-
Ohtani?
I mean, he's
Yeah.
the best player. He's been the best player in the NHL for years.
And he's
the-
also got really talented teammates, but
Yeah.
their teams don't win.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
um,
McDavid was
Who's
up
the
there.
tongue-steam arm over
Yeah,
oil?
there were, there was some curling candidates that you could make a case for.
Yeah.
There was one other one I saw someone making a case for, and I can't remember now. Oh, the golfer who did the putter toss at the Canadian Open, but I think that's more of one big moment than a good year.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty clearly Shai when you looked at it.
Yeah.
Now we're heading into an Olympic year, like next year's an Olympic year.
He can go
so
back to back.
The Olympic years are way more interesting for this award because you get a ton more. I don't know that even the people voting on this, like, are they looking at the track and field 2023 championships in wherever, who was the,
Yeah.
they probably do if Canada has a real chance or someone picks up buzz. But an Olympic year, these are way more open and much more interesting. And I think you're right. I do think Shai has the chance to repeat. And he said yesterday, basically, like, hey, I'm looking forward to making you guys proud again in 2024.
Man, that was my favorite part of the summer, was getting to watch, like waking up literally at 4:30 a.m. sometimes, but getting to watch that Canada team. Like, it was so memorable watching that whole group, how they came together. I think the effects have carried over into the season. You look at what Dylan Brooks has done for this season with the Houston Rockets. Like, he's brought that same energy, that same swagger, but more importantly, that same three-point shot to a different program. And of course, Shai was just awesome. I can't stress this enough, because it was obviously, like, this is way back in August now. But that game where they qualified for the Olympics, the men's, for the first time since 2000, where they beat Spain and they had to come back from being down 10 at halftime. They climb all the way back. Then they fall all the way back down 10 because their second unit wasn't very good. Shai plays the entire fourth quarter, brings them all the way back, forces overtime, wins it in overtime. Like, the two-way production that he was able to provide. Actually, I don't know if they even got overtime. Maybe they just won in regulation. Regardless, Shai literally made every single play on both sides of the ball. And it was such an exhilarating feeling getting to root for him wholeheartedly because he's on Team Canada. And yeah, I'm really proud of him, but also at the same time, he's going to be the best Canadian basketball player ever if he's not already there. And I know how much people value Steve Nash because of the two MVPs and how memorable that team was. Trust me, like that version of Steve Nash and that Phoenix Suns team got me to watch basketball. So it's going to be very hard for anyone to unseat that. But as someone who has watched a lot of basketball, Shai is definitively a better player than Steve was, and he's just starting out right now. And he's going to be at this level for a very long time.
And still improving. Like the defense has stepped up this year. He's shooting 55% from the mid-range this year. Like, he's got to be, if we're excluding the guys like LeBron and Giannis who are just like physically, you can't play against them one-on-one. They're just too strong. They're too bursty. Like, in terms of craft and moves and handle and things like that, I think Shai's got to be the toughest one-on-one. Like,
his skill is nuts.
Kyrie's probably still close just because the handle and the range. But, man, I mean, Shai's got so many tricks in the bag, score-wise, pass-wise, true three-level guy.
He's awesome. And he's added the defense, too, as you mentioned, too. So he's already punked Steph Curry twice this year.
Punked him 4 times because he did it on IG
7
as well.
too, by the way. Like the Thunder are. This isn't the 500 Thunder who are a really good story and Shai's fifth in MVP. This is a Thunder team that is second in a loaded Western Conference. And I think, look, we're coming up on the point where Tim Bontemps does his first third of the season MVP straw poll. I would be very surprised if Shai is in top 3 at the first third of the way mark.
Yeah, he deserves it, man. Good for him. Congratulations, Shai. And that was a sick jersey to pull out too.
Yeah, breaking
Where do you get that from?
Shai is good. I can't say. Next up, the Los Angeles Lakers, it was reported yesterday, are going to be raising a banner for their in-season tournament win. And there was a lot of chatter about, the Lakers being a glorious franchise. They shouldn't stoop to this level to raise a banner for this NBA Cup. What are your thoughts, guys?
I think it's lame that people are finding ways to discredit winning. You know what? You think it's the only reason you're mad is because your team is not putting up a banner in your room. Like, you go to, for example, and I always make the comparisons to soccer, but you go to Liverpool's training facilities.
Yeah.
And you walk in and there is a wall where it has the number of Champions League trophies they've won, the number of league trophies that they've won, the number of FA Cup trophies that they won, the amount of League Cup trophies that they won. It's just on the wall. You celebrate all of them. Now, of course, you celebrate certain things like a Champions League way more than others, just like you would celebrate a championship more than others. But, like, you're starting a tradition, and you have brought this the new situation in, and they won it. So, like,
and do we want people everyone
it's just
I don't want to do the
winning,
everyone says this stuff, but people have asked for a long time to make the regular season more important, and the in-season tournament was not perfect. But why are we then turning around and clowning guys for caring about something that, I mean, is competitive games? It made the regular season more important. It is a thing that eventually maybe will mean something. Also, if you just wanted to celebrate and spray champagne because you won $500K, I wouldn't. If I won $500K right now, I'd pull a bottle out for the 3 of us.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
I would hope at minimum we got a bottle.
I don't know. I think some of it is just everyone has an opinion on everything, and you're going to get some of that. And they're at least making it look different. Apparently, it's going to be a different color and a different shape and stuff like that. Yeah. Also, like, I think the real answer is Adam Silver probably told the Lakers, you have to do this. This is important to the league, and we'll be very upset with you if you don't.
Once again, LeBron is doing this, called Adam Silver a genius, probably approved this banner. So then he can own a Las Vegas franchise while he plays with his son on the Lakers still.
Yeah.
I see you, LeBron. I'm familiar with your game, man. You can't fool me. Next up, Ja Morant is almost making his return. I believe he was testifying in court this week.
Yeah, for the lawsuit where he's alleged to have assaulted a teen, and they're counter arguing that it was self-defense. And there are a bunch of weird clips online of like they're getting Ja to like show them like the technique of a basketball pass, and like they're showing highlights of his dunks to be like, this is the force he can.
Is this when they're gonna make Azotam show them in court how to log into Synergy?
Yeah,
and steal data. Yeah. Drake's in the corner. I see a lot of synergy.
Prove to us that Pascal's the #1 post scorer in the league. Walk us through that.
He is Ja Morant is nearing his return from his 25-game suspension. He's slated to be back on December 19th. Adam Silver was asked about this, I believe, when he held a presser at in Vegas at the IST, and said that so far.
This was when he called himself Henry Kissinger, unprompted?
I think this was another thing.
Yeah, it was. Okay.
Right. I'm enjoying all the banter. Anyway, Silver says he still needs to talk to Ja, but he's complied with everything to date. The Grizzlies are one of the few teams that are worse than the Raptors right now. 6-16, 6 games out of the play-in. I guess we'll throw it to Grizzlies preseason believer Will Lou over here. Is it too late? Is it too late for the Grizzlies to get back into things here?
I don't think it's too late. But
there's 6 games back of the play-in already.
Yeah, I still think that Ja coming in is going to be obviously a huge impact. The issue is they lost Steven Adams literally at the start of the season, him without even playing a game, and they needed to be really imposing defensively, and I think they were able to do that with him and also Jaren Jackson Jr. together. And on top of that, they've had a whole bunch of injuries since then. They've just kind of been really, really lost. But I also do think that Ja is we can't deny the fact that he's going to come in and could this team finish 500? Could they be 10 games of 500 with Ja? I mean, maybe.
The last 2 years,
doable.
In about 60 games each season, he was worth an estimated 9.5 and 8.5 wins. So if we look at that, and that is about the number of games he'll get to play here. He's eligible to play in 57 games. So we can look at maybe that's an 8.5 win difference. Now he's not replacing replacement level guys like that. They have some NBA guards in there, but it does nicely shift everyone into a more suitable role. Gives you more options playing small a little bit, or at least with an extra guard on the floor. So I think it'll help. I think 500 is probably too. They'd have to make up 10 games to finish 500.
They would. They'd have to pull off a couple of long. They would have to throw 4 or 5
have to go
pizza
35
parties.
and 25 the rest of the way.
And
they have a couple games still before Ja comes back, so that could be even worse.
But look at the last game, for example, the Mavericks. They played against the Mavericks. They lost. Their starters were Jaren Jackson Jr., obviously, Desmond Bane.
He had a 40-piece last night.
Yeah, Jaren Jackson Jr. had 41. Desmond Bane had 28. Their other 3 starters, Santi Aldama, your boy.
That's my boy.
6 points. David Roddy, the body, 8 points.
Yeah, the Pacific Mall Dylan Brooks.
Yeah. And then Derrick Rose in the year 2023.
No way.
Derrick Rose is their starting point guard, and he had
Marcus
7
Smart's
points.
Out.
Yeah, where's Jacob Gilliard, man?
Jacob Gilliard was not used off the bench.
DNPCD.
Yeah.
They have a guy named GG Jackson?
That's right. He's 18 years old.
They also
good game, Jackson.
They have to they also have to clear a roster spot when Ja comes back because they've been playing.
I think they'll be okay on that.
Yeah.
I think Shaquille Harrison might gotta go. Yeah, I'm looking at the West right now. Forget about the Grizzlies for a second. Let's just assume they don't get back into this. Right now, it's 11 teams fighting for those 10 playoff spots,
Golden
including the play-in.
State's sitting 2 games out.
Yeah, so of these teams, okay, so we've got the top 6 right now. We know there can be a lot of movement. Right now, the play-in is Houston, Clippers, Phoenix, New Orleans, and then Warriors on the outside looking in 2 games back of New Orleans. Out of those 5 teams, do you see any of those teams being able to really make a push up to the top 6?
I think the Warriors are clearly the most. Well, actually, now that the Clippers are on the uprise, I don't know, but
And
like,
the Suns get Beal back tonight. I know KD is out, so we're still not going to see their big three together. But if they're getting if they're getting a little bit of Beal now too, like we're talking, it's only like a game and a half difference between them and like the Kings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which team out of those 5 would you pick most likely to end up in the top 6?
I buy the Warriors, but they have literally thrown away. I've watched them throw away like 4 or 5 games already this season.
Up like 15 to 20.
Up 15, up 20
22,
points.
Yeah.
You know, in their game against OKC, they're up like 3 with like about 10 seconds left, and they got a guard. And Draymond just intentionally fouls Chet Holmgren as he's shooting a 3. Like, he's literally shooting the 3, and Draymond's like, no, I'm going to foul him. And then he's like stomping around and being like, that's on the floor. That's on the floor. Clearly was not on the floor.
Do you think Draymond will be there when LeBron and the Lakers raise their in-season banner?
He probably will be.
Do you think he'll be there to celebrate with LeBron?
He'll put on a mustache and tell other, he's like, Draymond Green.
I'm surprised you picked the Warriors, man. I don't have a lot of confidence in the Warriors right now.
I've seen them play such good basketball, even with this group not necessarily playing up to par.
Yeah.
They just make so many dumb mistakes. Like they honestly probably make more dumb mistakes than the Raptors do. They just have really good quality and shot makers around that as well. But I don't know. I'm going to choose to go down with the ship like the Warriors are. But like some of this is just so self-inflicted that I think they could turn it around.
Yeah, I'm having trouble picking who I think will be the team that goes up into the top 6. I'm pretty confident it'll be the Kings that come down.
Okay.
I still don't really believe the defense is still bad. They've barely
over the Mavs?
Yeah, I mean the Kings have barely outscored their opponents, and they're 5 games over 500. Like they're due some regression there, and I think the Mavs are. I mean, we hear about the Kings, but being traded, I think the Mavs are going to be desperate to make this work, and I think the Mavs could be a team that adds between now and the deadline. I guess I'll say the Clippers to elevate. They have won 4 in a row. The plus minus stuff since they figured it out and moved Russ to the bench is trending in the right direction. So. I don't think they're flawless, but I think, I'm confident that the Clippers and Suns are better than the Kings, and the Pelicans probably are as well. So I think one of those teams will jump up.
I was going to pick Phoenix. So I guess we all pick different teams.
I wanted to pick Phoenix, but then I also had them as my lock to be under 51. Yeah. But under 51
they could still be in there.
Yeah, they could do both.
So what about at the top? Minnesota is 17-5 right now. OKC, like we mentioned, is the number 2 seed. We got Dallas there. Of those 3, do you see them holding that kind of top 6 spot or even top 3?
Who we
do you see Minnesota, OKC, and Dallas? They're top of the West right now. Is there a team where you're like, oh, I don't really believe this right now?
I mean, Dallas at a top
probably
3
Dallas.
level.
Yeah.
I don't know about them sliding all the way out of the top 6.
Yeah.
But yeah, as a top 3 level. Minnesota and OKC are weird because I still don't think they're like the ceiling is quite as high as, Denver, who are the defending champs.
Yeah.
But those teams are also, yes, we should absolutely care about the regular season. We should care about avoiding the play, and we should care about getting a top seed and home court advantage. Mm-hmm. So, we know that teams like the Nuggets and Lakers maybe aren't going to care that much about pushing for the top seed. So I'm a little more confident in Minnesota OKC. OKC also has like a monster point differential. Like they have the point differential of a 15-7 team. This isn't smoke and mirrors.
Mm-hmm. They also got great depth. And they got a great system. Like, it's just every time you watch OKC, it's like it must be exhausting to play against
they're
this
not
team,
going to do it, but they could absolutely push in for someone at the deadline if they wanted to.
Like,
nobody has more draft assets than them.
Like Thorpe was mentioning, it's like if this team was able to acquire a Pascal Siakam to join what is already a really, really nice two-way team, like it would just take them to another level. Even my suggestion of them getting a center, like just go something cheaper, get Jakob Poeltl, for example, in this group. You can have him, go up against some of the bigger centers. It doesn't matter if he doesn't close because you can close small with Chet, but you can play more matchups. I think that's the one thing they're missing is that they don't have a true 7-footer who can does this sound like an advertisement? Is Sam Presti buying this? But seriously, they have really done a great job of building an identity. And then around a young coach who obviously hasn't really coached in that many levels and people aren't that familiar with. But when you watch the Thunder play, obviously they're young and that's the front office, but they all just drive, kick. It's
they kick push like Lupe Fiasco.
This is the Lupe Fiasco team.
Yeah,
Jalen Williams getting real good.
Oh my god. Yeah. By the way, if we trade on Pascal, I need it can't just be Josh Giddey coming back or whatever. First off, I don't want Josh Giddey. Period. Yeah. But I would need
Give us 2 Jalen Williamses, man. We'll just take 2.
Trying to get
we'll
a
take
BOGO?
Yeah.
Trying to get a BOGO?
Two more things before we go to
by the way, I
break.
doubt we can get Jalen Williams.
Yeah.
It would be nice, but I don't know.
I guess it's a pretty good Coach of the Year battle shaping up. I know the Ringer just put out their quarter mark awards. We might get to that later this week, but like Jamal Mosley in Orlando, Mark Daigneault in OKC, and our guy Chris Finch in Minnesota. Like that's gonna be looking nice. And the note about Ben Golliver, who's gonna join us in the final segment, is last time he was on, it was early in the season. I think the Spurs just wrapped up 2 games in Phoenix. And, Wembanyama was really impressive. They haven't won a single game since we talked to Ben.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah, it's been that long.
It's tough because I felt like Wemby Mania would be like a year-long theme.
Yeah.
And it literally just died with the fact that they never win again.
Popovich said, nah, bro.
The only thing I've heard from the Spurs since then is Greg Popovich grabbing the mic.
Yeah.
Samson Folk style, being like, guys, we don't do this here.
I really thought the Spurs, I was like, man, the Spurs can make the conference finals this year. Never mind.
Yeah.
Never mind.
That's tough.
Yeah,
Anyway.
Coach of the Year vote's tough.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't, I think, it's a little early still and they're not on that level, but I think some people give Ime Udoka love as well for the Rockets being the most improved.
He'll be in the top 5.
Yeah, the most improved defense and 11-9 right now.
I feel like it's going to be Orlando and OKC. If they keep their standing, obviously.
Honestly, between those two, if Orlando keeps up what they're doing, because they're 16-7 right now.
Yeah.
The Orlando Magic are 16-7.
Hey, man, listen. If Philly finishes with the 1 seed, Nick Nurse is going to be there too, man.
I think the issue with that is
he's been coach.
He's already been Coach of the Year.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, we have this Nick Nurse bobblehead.
Yeah, why is it in here?
Oh, yeah.
Why'd you bring that, man?
Well, it was your decision.
Oh,
you said you wish you had a Fred VanVleet bobblehead too, just to taunt Raptors.
Last thought on that. One, I don't think Nick Nurse would be in the Coach of the Year mix just because we've seen the 76ers do this in the regular season before. I don't think anyone's going to be like, obviously you don't get Coach of the Year for what happens in the playoffs, but I do think some people still look at the Sixers and be like, well, we don't know it's different until then. But the other thing is, you guys mentioned Minnesota, Orlando, and OKC as candidates, and I threw Houston in there. Those 4 teams are all top 5 in defense.
Yeah,
you can't always control. You can't always control what offensive talent you have, how much the threes drop. If you don't have shooters, the threes just won't drop. Cannot be 24th in defense over a 1 month stretch when you're supposed sorry to circle this back to Raptors negativity.
I like this.
But
it
really strikes home like Orlando is doing a better version of what the Raptors are trying to do. Last year's OKC team was very similar to the Raptors tactically on defense. They prioritized forcing turnovers and they had no natural rim protection. They were the Raptors pre-Jakob Poeltl and they did a better job of it. Houston obviously with Fred there, that's made a difference. But Houston's second in defense with Alperen Şengün on the floor for like 38 minutes a game or 35 minutes a game, who, people had real concerns about his defensive capability. This is something, not everyone could be a top 5 defense, but you have more control over how good your defense is night to night than you do of, hey, are our threes going to drop tonight? And it's been so disappointing to see the Raptors not even close to that mix.
Raptors had like top 5, top 6 defenses with JV in the middle, Louis Scola at 4, DeMar Carroll at 3, DeMar DeRozan at 2, and Kyle Lowry at 1. There's exactly one good defender in that group in Kyle Lowry. And they were able to be top 6 defensively. And of course, they brought guys that were good defenders off the bench, like Corey Joseph and Bismack Biyombo back in the day. But you compare that defensive personnel to what the Raptors are working with right now, and you're telling me that a good coach is bringing the best out of them defensively? No. Like, you look at the Houston Rockets, as you mentioned, like, you can pick both rosters, you could put all the players up, and you can draft who's the best defenders that you want to build a defense with. It will take a while until you got to Fred VanVleet, who will probably be the number 1 guy you would take off that team. But there are better defenders on the Raptors than Fred, who obviously was here for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, Dylan Brooks probably goes higher than that.
My bad. Dylan Brooks goes above. But still, like, Dylan Brooks alone shouldn't be turning your whole defense around. That's what a strong coach who can really get through to his players, get them to lock in and buy in and commit to playing hard. Things like transition defense, which is nothing but playing hard. And, of course, taking good shots. But still, both things are within your own control. They don't do that.
Yeah, listen, the Raps are either going to finish 10th or 11th in the East. That's what we're playing for. It's the 10-11 bowl this week. 2 straight games against the Hawks.
That's right.
Oh, boy.
Winner takes Pascal Siakam. Okay, we're going to take another break, our last break. Been your host, Willow. You've been listening to The Raptor Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Welcome back to the Raptors show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. I'm your host, Wayne Malou. For the last segment here, I'm joined by co-host Blake Murphy, and we are joined on the line by Ben Golliver of the Washington Post. Ben, Alex just made me realize that the last time we got you on was after Wemby made that great comeback against the Suns, and they beat them, I think, twice in the span of a week. And it's been like probably over a month since we had you on, and the Spurs have not won a game in that time. So I guess my question is, are you spending much time in San Antonio these days?
No, and actually I'm reporting live from the airport today. Still no sign of Ohtani's plane, but I'll keep you guys updated here in Southern California. No, it sounds to me like you're giving me the credit for being the good luck charm for Wemby's career. As soon as I stop covering the Spurs, they just fall off a cliff. Is that right?
Yeah, that sounds about
That's
right.
what we were going for initially until the Ohtani comment, and now I'm going to frame it as you broke him. You did something to disrupt the good that was happening in San Antonio.
Yeah, as a neutral, as obviously someone who is not partial to the Toronto Blue Jays, how funny is it as a neutral that Blue Jays fans obsessed themselves and willed Shohei Ohtani into this plane, and then what stepped out was a Dragon's Den member?
Yeah, look, you guys could treat me like a hostile witness. I get it. That was probably a little below the belt right off the top. I'll just say, I mean, I do feel like there's some self-inflicted wounds from Toronto fan bases. You guys just take it a little bit too far sometimes. I appreciate the passion. I think it's a good thing. I actually went to go see Ohtani pitch one of his last games here in Anaheim because I was certain they were going to trade him at the deadline because that seemed like the pretty logical thing to do, and they didn't, and now it blew up in their face, and thankfully he'll be across town up at Dodger Stadium, so maybe I'll be able to get him see him next year. But yeah, what a circus that was. Sorry to derail the conversation, but
no, it's all good.
Sorry, guys.
At least the Angels, through all that, managed to duck just below the luxury tax line. That's that's the important thing there with Ohtani. All right, let's pivot here a little bit. So Ben, instead of being in San Antonio, you were just down in Las Vegas. You were on the scene for the in-season tournament's neutral site games. We all, Saturday was a lot of fun. I think most people seem to enjoy the in-season tournament overall. You're the first person we've talked to, though, who was there. And, you wrote a piece for the Washington Post. The NBA Cup must craft a better game atmosphere to be a lasting hit. So am I reading that correctly, that in Vegas itself, it lacked just a little oomph?
No, exactly right. I mean, I'm sure you guys have been going to basketball tournaments since you were little kids, right? And I've been to a bunch over the years, whether it's AAU tournaments, the NCAA tournament. You might look at the NBA playoffs as a basketball tournament, the Olympics. And there's been some weird situations, too, like the bubble when there's no fans or the Olympics when there's no fans in Tokyo. So it's been a wide range of game day experiences to kind of compare this to. And I think they got a really strong television rating. This was obviously a made-for-television event. But I think if the NBA Cup or the in-season tournament, whatever you want to call it, is really going to have a lasting legacy and kind of be taken seriously, they need to think long and hard about pumping up the actual atmosphere in the arenas. I think the issue that we had in Las Vegas is that, first of all, they were playing that first game, the Pacers versus the Bucks on Thursday at 2 p.m., They're playing it basically 2 or 3 days after those teams even qualified from the quarterfinals. So there's no Bucks fans in the building practically. There's hardly any Pacers fans in the building. Yes, Tyrese Halliburton's dad was sitting courtside having a great time, loving life, but you need more than blood relatives, I think, to create a real atmosphere, right? You guys have seen Raptors games in the playoffs. I mean, it's a little bit crazy, sometimes too crazy, like, the Kevin Durant incident, right? But there was just
what are we doing, man? Let's hang up on Ben right now.
There was none of that intensity. There's none of that back and forth between the rival fan bases in the arena. And it just kind of turned into a Lakers pep rally, right? Because, of course, there's going to be a lot of Lakers fans coming from Los Angeles or living there in Las Vegas. And so the neutral site, to me, was not neutral, and it was not a charged atmosphere. And I think they got to step back and ask, how many better basketball cities are there than Las Vegas where they could host this thing? I mean, I think there's at least 15 among NBA cities. I would include Toronto in that group. There's so many better venues than T-Mobile Arena. It's a solid arena. It's very passable. There's nothing super spectacular about it. You would have a much better crowd in Madison Square Garden. You'd have better celebrities if that's your thing. And it seems like that's the NBA's thing, is having guys like Timothée Chalamet sitting courtside, or Steffi Graf, whoever else they kind of brought out for this tournament, right? But You put it at like the new Intuit Dome in Inglewood when that opens up next year, or you put it in Madison Square Garden. Heck, you even put it in Miami, and maybe you've got some season ticket holders who decide to show up. Not having like a designated group of NBA fans in Las Vegas really worked against this event, and it prevented it from being something where I feel like people should have FOMO about it. It's okay if you didn't go. It was okay to watch on TV. And that's a problem to me, because I think if you really want this to be a hit, you've got to want people from across the country saying, I've got to book my ticket to go see that, right? I've got to go make this a destination. And at this point, the NBA Cup doesn't hit that standard.
Yeah. You know, I there was the comparison made to like Champions League and, you know, what that looks like, or even the FA Cup final for someone like, you know, well in advance what city that's going to be in, what time that's going to be in. And you have a really, like, even after that semifinals and you have the 2 finalists determined, you still have like 2-3 weeks to arrange plans. As you mentioned, like you got 2-3 days. Who is just like dropping everything in 2-3 days to fly to Vegas to watch, you know, the Bucks play, you know, the Pacers.
Nobody
in December.
That's the answer. Nobody did it. That's the problem, right? Yeah. Do you think they should just back it up a week? If you had 10 days, like let's say the Raptors had made it. If you guys had 10 days, you'd be there, right?
You can make plans at least.
Or fans.
Yeah, what are you going to tell your boss? Like, hey, I'm just not coming in. Like, sorry, the in-season tournament's like, and I got to go tomorrow. Like, yeah, you probably need to give it some distance just to make it make sense logistically. On the TV side of things, so they had a really dim on you know, they had the theater lighting, which obviously helped to accentuate like the actual product on the court. The court being bright also helped with that. In the arena, like, was it like that dark? And also, like, was it dark because they were trying to hide empty seats?
I think so. I mean, I think that was part of the reason why they did it. In the arena, the court looked awesome. The guys really looked like they were on a stage. So I thought the lighting worked really well in person. But for that first game, it was half full, you know, at 2 p.m. in Vegas on a Thursday. And, you know, unfortunately, there was also a mass shooting the day before. And so Vegas was in a very somber mood, you know, because of that UNLV shooting. And so, you know, they did a moment of silence before that. And, you know, maybe that was a contributing factor on Thursday. I'm not sure. But, you know, the Lakers fans showed up for the second game. They definitely showed up for that championship game. But I do think the lighting part could stay for me. I thought it worked out pretty well. I didn't like the red on the court. I would have changed that. I actually would have gone with like an OVO gold and black motif, I think, to kind of match the trophy. I think that would have been a better look, you know, for that stage. But to me, it was less about the lighting and more just about like, where are the diehard fans? If they put this thing in Toronto and the same timing, I bet you at least 10,000 Raptors fans are showing up just to go see what it's all about, right? Even if the Raptors aren't in it. And I don't think they need to worry about home court advantage because the Lakers already had home court advantage in Las Vegas, right? So the idea of a neutral site to me was kind of overblown. I think there's been Super Bowls where the winning team played in their own city in the Super Bowl. Like sometimes that happens. I just think that they need to consider finding the best basketball markets, the best basketball buildings, and building this thing out so that true diehards, people who are going to get there and cheer and have the old school jerseys on and be really ready to kind of represent for their teams, are able to kind of create this this atmosphere that just wasn't there in Las Vegas. It felt corporate. I'll be honest. It felt a little bit soulless in the building. And that's not what you're quite going for. I thought they got pretty good games. Halliburton was incredible on Saturday, right? LeBron played the best game I've seen him play since the 2020 finals in that semifinals against the Pelicans, who, you know, who knows, maybe they went out a little bit and had too much fun the night before because they just didn't show up. And the championship game was close. Like they got a decent game. It's not like they got skunked, but the atmosphere did not reflect the quality of play on the court. And I think that's where I would try to start with the tweaks. Everybody wants to say, oh, you know, change the stakes. You know, you got to make this more meaningful. I think that's important too, but I would really try to figure out how can you turn this into an electric atmosphere, sort of like a Cameron Indoor Arena at Duke, right? Or a crazy high school basketball tournament where the two fan bases are yelling back and forth at each other, overrated and all that kind of stuff. They just need more of that to, you know, so they can lighten up the arena and just show the crowd rather than trying to hide the crowd. To me, the crowd is such an important element of any big event like this, especially one that's trying to build credibility and build momentum and build a history here over, say, the next 10 or 20 years.
In terms of that history that you're going to try to build with this, certainly, you know, if it was always in one spot, that's one thing. If the home court advantage became a big part of the story, and who knows, those point differential tiebreakers matter even more at the top because you want the home court advantage. We'll see how that shakes out. But in terms of the history and setting the stage for what this is going to become, how helpful do you think it will be for the league that it was LeBron and the Lakers who won the inaugural one?
Well, David Stern's old line was his dream finals matchup was Lakers versus Lakers. I mean, once they got the Lakers into the final, if I was an NBA executive, I would have been down on my knees praying. I would have been so happy because had they not had the Lakers in the semifinal and the final, I think you would have had the same issues at the gate in terms of attracting fans. And then you really would have had to kind of talk about, well, is this a success? Is this even working? Are people buying into it? And I think the Lakers' presence, and especially LeBron's presence in terms of how seriously he took this tournament from the start and how well he played in Las Vegas, kind of setting the tone for the tournament, it papered over a lot of the potential weaknesses. And so if we fast forward to next year and the Lakers don't make it, that's what I'm concerned about. If they don't take some of these steps to address, fan involvement, consider, giving like season ticket holders for the teams discounted or free tickets. So if they're willing to travel to that arena, they can go watch their team play, something that just gets some real genuine energy in that building because the Lakers saved their butts. There's no question about it, right? If the Lakers aren't in there, this entire thing feels different. And you can say the same thing about the bubble too. I was there for sure, and it ended on a high note because it adds to LeBron's legacy. It gets people, taking that entire experience more seriously, or it gets the haters to say Mickey Mouse ring. I understand, but that's also good for business because you're getting people talking either way. Had this been Pelicans Pacers in the final, there may have actually been tumbleweeds in the building. Like it's definitely possible. And they didn't narrowly avert that because the Lakers killed the Pelicans, but they were only one game away from having that sort of worst case scenario.
Yeah, the league owes LeBron a lot, maybe even a whole franchise in Las Vegas, which was kind of the subtext of the whole thing. It was funny even watching because you were there in person, watching the TV broadcast, and it was like maybe 5, maybe 10 minutes right before tip-off. And the broadcast had the panel on ESPN, and all of them were picking LeBron to win, and they were openly begging LeBron to win this for the sake of the tournament, which kind of did, obviously happen. But as you mentioned, there is also, just this very soullessness about it. But look, the games were fun, and I think that's for me the biggest thing. Did you hear any feedback from players, coaches, the league, et cetera, on sort of like the reception, the experience of playing in it?
Well, I think there was some nerves going into this event, like, was it going to work? And so I think the league came out very happy with how it played out. I mean, they got like 4.6 million people watching on television. They got the LeBron getting to hold up the trophy. They got all the interplay between Silver and LeBron kind of feeling like best buddies, making the jokes that you were making about, is he going to get a franchise? No, it doesn't come with that. Ha, ha, ha. I just want to paint the color behind the scenes, though. So, they did this very brief champagne room situation where it was like not in the locker room. It was like, this is the designated place where you can go spray champagne if you want. And it was
Don't ruin the locker room is crazy, but all right.
Yeah, no, I'm just giving it to you straight. And then when they got back to the locker room, LeBron's just sitting at his locker. He's like, caked in ice. He's just sitting there. He's not really celebrating. He's munching on some grapes. It's just like, this is the least excited title celebration I've ever seen. The trophy is sitting on the table, unattended, right next to some bandages and some gum. It's just there. Like, this is not, it didn't feel like any sort of a playoff title celebration we've ever seen before, right? So he had the goggles on, probably didn't actually need them. And then they tried to kick everybody out of the building by 11 p.m. They're like, look, you don't have to, leave. You don't have to go home, but you got to get out of here, right? So you basically had like 2 hours or so to write your story, and then you had to bounce, and they were already turning the arena over to whatever the next thing it was going to be. So, like I said, I mean, they came, they saw, they conquered. I think that was sort of the, the feeling. And, the one guy whose comment stuck out to me was D'Angelo Russell, because, he said he was really excited to win the money because it was going to finance his All-Star weekend vacations and his off-season vacations. I was like, great. That's very good for D'Angelo Russell. It's very good for the Lakers guys who aren't making as much money as D'Angelo Russell. I'm sure the players or accountants were massive winners from the in-season tournament, right? But if you're trying to appeal to the casual fans or people who might be considering a trip to the tournament in the future years, you've got to have something for those fans to kind of get invested in, whether it's increased stakes or something else, a better environment, because who really cares where D'Angelo Russell's, which island he's going to go on in July? Nobody cares. And it was a little bit cringy. And the whole thing, again, it felt a little soulless, like nakedly capitalistic, right? Here we are creating this event solely so we can hand money out. That's like the entire purpose of it, and kind of milk money from consumers. And I just think the NBA can be better than that, personally.
Get ready to learn capitalism, buddy. That is going to be a part of it. Before we let you go, I know you had a piece of the Washington Post heading in about the actual hardware players received that trophy and things like that. The all-tournament team, does it look as much like a bowling ball in person as it did in the pictures, or does it look like, is it a basketball?
Oh, that's a great question. I've only seen the pictures. I actually didn't get to see it in person.
Sorry. I thought you got to have a look.
Well, they somehow never named the all-tournament team until like Monday. Everybody had left. I don't know if there was hanging chads involved or like, they really had to go through this very careful voting process. Sorry, that was an American political reference for you guys.
Get it.
Yeah, no, it was just like, come on, we can't even name the all-tournament team. What's going on here? So I saw the MVP trophy, which was very cool. And the actual NBA Cup trophy I thought was excellent. Like, I wouldn't change it. It was solid. It was the right size. It felt very soccer, when LeBron lifted it up. But I do think that the bowling ball comparison is fair based on the pictures that I saw. But I can't confirm. I don't know if they had the 3 finger holes or not. But it was different, and LeBron handed his MVP trophy immediately to Maverick Carter. I don't know if he ever got it back or if that was just a gift. But maybe, somewhere on Maverick Carter's, fireplace is going to be the first in-season tournament MVP trophy one day.
Yeah. All right. Well, last thing then. You were there for Bronny James's USC debut. We got like 2 minutes for this. So how was that? Obviously, the context there being that Bronny had the health scare. He had, I believe, a cardiac arrest, and then he came back and he was able to take the floor again. It's really great to see him being healthy first and foremost. But what was the atmosphere like, and what was the reception like there?
Well, USC basketball is like pretty low on the totem pole in terms of the biggest, events, sporting events in LA. I mean, obviously UCLA is the powerhouse. USC is kind of the little brother. DeMar DeRozan kind of helped give them a little era, and he's got his own weight room, that he paid for USC. So they got some pretty nice facilities, thanks to DeMar DeRozan. But normally they say the student section's empty and the building's half full. It was completely packed out for Bronny James. They sold the thing out. Students were lined up 2 hours in advance to kind of get their spot in the student section. And I think everybody felt like you just felt, which is, it's so nice to have this guy back on the court. It's almost incredible that he's been able to get back 5 months after, a career and life-threatening incident. I also think it's changed the conversation. This is no longer about, can Bronny live up to his father's shadow? Is he going to be the next Marcus Jordan? All that stuff is put to the wayside. And it's all just about man, this kid seems pretty cool. He seems pretty down to earth for being as famous and rich as he's been his entire life. And hard on defense. He moves the basketball on offense. He's kind of a 3-point shooter, off-ball type of guy. He's not trying to put his head down and dunk on you every single moment. And he's just a good kid. And I think that he really rallied a lot of support, not only from the USC fans, but I think actually from a lot of the media who was in attendance, who really appreciated how he conducted his business and are just kind of glad to see him back on the court and maybe getting back on track towards a potential NBA career. LeBron was overjoyed, showed up early, gave Bronny a little love tap when he was going to take a seat courtside. Gloria James was there, filming with her camera phone, just like a proud grandmother. His little sister was there. A whole bunch of Clutch people were there. Lakers GM Rob Pelinka was there to show support as well. So it felt kind of like this warm embrace for Bronny. And in this age where everybody's just hating all the time, especially on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, it was actually kind of nice and refreshing. It's people are actually kind of behind this guy and excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, that's really great. And I'm really happy that he's supported that way. So Ben Golliver of the Washington Post, appreciate you for joining us once again.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Are we going to let him back on the show after he made fun of Shohei? And
if we're going to only do guests that didn't make fun of Toronto for missing out on Shohei and tracking planes and stuff, we're going to be a little light on guests.
He is a great guest. And okay. That does it for us today. Been your host.
One tiny update.
What's up?
Justice Winslow's making his Raptors 905 debut tonight. He's finally going to play Game 13.
That's what we need. Another forward who doesn't shoot the ball well.
Can you do that?
There's a 905 player potentially on the show tomorrow, so let's. This could be win number 2 tonight.
Can you do the outro faster than you did yesterday?
I'm gonna have
Let's
to.
go.
I'm your host, Will. You've been listening to the Raptor Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Make sure you listen to the Raptor Show wherever you find podcasts. Subscribe, please rate and review. Thanks once again to David Thorpe, Ben Golliver, producer and co-host Alex Wong, Blake Murphy, board producer Derek Vandale, Jen Rolnick, Dave Sis, J.R. Manatad, and we'll be back tomorrow.